As a joke, you had always said, "I dedicate this to Hades," as you threw away food scraps from your cooking and cleaning your plates. When you die, you find yourself in front of Charon's boat with Hades sitting in it, seemingly very excited to see his most devoted follower in recent times. Story 1. I've had a good life, Samuel thought to himself, reposed in his hospital bed. The illness had come on him quickly, and his life would soon end. Not enough time for his family to arrive. His kids had scattered to the winds, with lives and families and success of their own. Besides, he thought, glancing out the window at the snowy sky, travel this time of year is rough. He was proud of the people they had become, and couldn't begrudge them for being unable to attend his final moments. His wife had passed 3 years prior. He was looking forward to seeing her again. Samuel had no regrets in life, and was ready to pass peacefully. A nurse came into the room, she always a bit brusque but not uncompassionate. He rather liked her demeanor. Saria, though. Or maybe Sarah. Well, she'll forgive his memory. She told him it would be time soon, and asked if he had a family priest, or if he wanted to be attended by the hospital chaplain. It took a moment for her words to work through his mind. "No," he replied finally, "no priest. But I'd like a bit of food. Anything is fine." She started to respond in the negative, because it wouldn't sit well with the drugs he's taking. But his stubbornness, along with it being truly his final request, made her relent. Soon she returned with a pudding cup and a plastic spoon. With a smile, he thanked her. He fumbled with it for a moment, but it too relented under his stubborn will, and opened. He took a small spoonful and ate it, and then did the little ritual he had done his whole life. Haltingly, with the last of his strength, he intoned, "I dedicate this to Hades," and dropped the nearly full pudding cup into the bag taped to the tray. It was just a silly quirk that had become a habit over the years, and he felt comfort getting to do it once more. Serena gave him a bit of an odd look, but said nothing, and after a moment he assented. The nurse stepped out. Soon, they would bring him a dose of painkiller strong enough to induce the sleep from which he would never awake. Samuel felt like he was floating in an infinite void of nothing. It was warm, gentle, silent. The infinite nothing seemed to cradle him, and for an endless moment, he floated at peace. Finally, after an eternity of peace, he felt himself shift and found himself standing. It was an odd, not quite right feeling, though he hadn't stood straight in nearly a decade, so he might be misremembering. Looking around, the void seemed to twist and curl, resolving into something like a pier. The tinkling of a bell and a light in the distance. The void turned to mist, which separated as the light drew nearer. Something like black water almost seems to flow into existence under a bone-white boat, long and slender, with a horsehead figure on the front, a lantern gripped like a bit in its mouth. The lantern was completely still, but a pale green flame swayed under the glass, burning atop a red candle. Samuel's mind was still feeling sluggish. He couldn't quite comprehend what he was seeing, but neither was he particularly afraid. Everything felt muffled here. As the boat drew near, a figure became visible, though his face was difficult to look upon. It seemed to shift, from grizzled to refined to unnatural to skull, never really resolving to a singular image of personhood. But the riddle of the man's face was soon overshadowed by the two other figures in the boat. The first, a man both young and old, wearing a fashionable suit. He was bedecked in necklaces, rings, and earrings, all encrusted with many gems, and the enthusiastic smile on his face was dazzling. Sitting beside him, a woman in a simple gown of cream and forest green, with a somewhat beleaguered smile on her face as she held the man's arm. Samuel realized who he must be seeing. With muted surprise, he was looking upon Hades, Persephone, and Charon. Before he could fully register what was happening, Hades's exuberance finally overflowed, and he stood up, then jumped from the boat to reach the pier, causing it to rock violently. The ferryman swore, and the woman gasped. Hades paid them no mind, all of his focus on Samuel. "Samuel, you wonderful mortal! I cannot tell you how pleased I am to finally meet you." His voice was powerful, surprisingly so. The god was tall, but not overwhelmingly so, and his frame was quite slim. His features were fine, belayed by just a day's growth of beard. His eyes sparkled like gems as he spoke with great enthusiasm. "You, my most devout of followers, speaker and evangelist of my name." He took Samuel's hand and shook it so hard that Samuel thought it might fall off. But his mind suddenly felt clear, and the hand that held Hades was not an old man of 90s, but that of a young man. "Hades." Samuel was trying desperately to collect himself. "I'm sorry, there must be some misunderstanding. Nonsense." Hades cut in, his big smile seemingly growing even wider. "You have given me offerings for almost your entire life. Food from your own plate, even to your final breaths. Your dedication to me is beyond compare. And not only that, but you passed it to your offspring as well." A sudden vision filled Samuel's mind, his oldest son as a child of 4 years, witnessing Samuel's fun little ritual by chance. Samuel playfully saying that he gifts the food to Hades in thanks for their prosperity, since he's not just some scary death god, but the god of wealth. And then that son teaching his siblings that same ritual. Then them as adults still giving those same offerings Samuel himself did, but earnestly. And still more, the passage of time flowed before him. It would continue to spread down generations through his family line. Hundreds of new acolytes, an entire hidden religion, his family tied to this god. The visions finally gave up their grip on Samuel, and he stepped back, reeling. The boat had arrived while he was lost in the visions, and Persephone stepped beside her husband and took his hand in hers. They could have been any young couple on a walk down the pier, except... "Please forgive my husband his enthusiasm, Samuel. He has not been able to stop talking about you for ages now." Her voice was gentle, full of compassion and a bit of mischief. She reminded Samuel of, "Now, dear," she continued, "let's not keep the good man waiting. There will be plenty of time for this later. He surely wants to meet his wife." Thoughts banished from his mind completely. His wife, here? He could see her again? He thought there might be tears in his eyes. "Oh, how rude of me." "Yes, please, Samuel, come with us. Hop on our good man Charon's boat here, and let's go. We have much to discuss, you and I, and there's a good woman waiting patiently for you to return to her." Hades flashed another grin and gestured to the boat with his hand. Trembling, Samuel stepped on. Story 2. Didn't you hear me? Hop on. Let Charon ferry us over. Wow, I can't believe it. When the Greece declined and the Greek pantheon fell out of favor with the people, I really thought my proverbial goose was cooked, but then you. Jack's smile was tight and full of fear as he stared at the 7-foot-tall humanoid with the blue ball of flame hovering between his horns. Zeus? Ares? Poseidon? Those losers are so weak sauce right now due to their low worshiper turnout, but you, my friend, you single-handedly propped me up all these years. I could kiss you, my man. I might kiss you. I mean, if I was gonna kiss you, how would that fly with you? 'Cause really, my man, you literally saved my bacon. Forget about the kissing. I'm just hyped to finally meet my most devoted follower. Oh hell, I mean, I am totally looking forward this bromance. I've reserved the most scenic spot in the underworld for you. You'll have your own demon and imps to boss around. I plan to give you the juiciest souls to torment. Oh man, I just can't wait. Hang out with you and teach you about the underworld. You may not realize this, and it's hard to admit, but I grew up introverted. Didn't have a lot of friends. The other Olympians, they used to ignore me saying I smelled like smelly farts. Bunch of bastards. They knew it wasn't farts, it was the sulfur. Can you smell the sulfur? Smells like rotten eggs and they all knew this? Bunch of dicks. Do you think I smell like farts? No. Jack hurriedly shook his head in a panic. That's 'cause you get me, Jack. You actually took the time to understand me. Why else would you dedicate so many sacrifices to me? Jack frowned at this and tried to recall when he'd ever made a sacrifice to Hades. I dedicate this to Hades. He seemed to recall himself being quirky when his was alive, and stating this jokingly every time he tossed food scraps in the bin or garbage disposal. Mr. Hades, sir, could those sacrifices have been bits of food? Indeed, and you sent them with such frequency and regularity. They weren't much by themselves, but combined, you really showed just how much you cared about me. What should we do first? Get a beer? Pick up succubi? Pickleball? Beer sounds okay, Jack grudgingly admitted. He really could use a few dozen beers after being confronted by the god of the underworld. By the way, how did I die? That's a good question. Let me check, Hades murmured, making a scroll appear in a puff of flame. He produced a pair of rectangular, rimmed reading glasses from somewhere and balanced them on his end of his nose as he perused the document. Ah, I see. Seems that you died after asking someone to hold your beer. Doesn't really say what killed you, just that your last words were, "Hold my beer." That help? It explains a lot.